The most lethal strike in this entire saga never originated from Kendrick Lamar. It never emerged from a recording booth. It never materialized from any competing artist on this planet. It materialized from within his own fortress, the very institution that bankrolled his ascension, orchestrated his playlist domination, engineered his omnipresence across every streaming platform on Earth. That entity just stared directly through him and declared, "You are a fraud, and we possess every document to substantiate it." Universal Music Group has officially submitted their rebuttal to Drake's appeal, and this filing does not merely respond, it systematically dismantles an entire mythology. They conducted a forensic examination of contradictions so clinically precise that once you absorb the full weight of what they articulated, the landscape of this confrontation transforms permanently. And if you are prepared to witness the full magnitude of what just transpired, then strap in because this redefines everything. The implications here extend far beyond two artists and one courtroom. What sits at the center of this collision is the creative DNA of an entire genre, and what Universal just committed to paper could determine whether competitive lyricism survives the decade. Abandon every preconception you carried about this narrative. The sanitized version circulating through social media. Drake initiates litigation. The court dismisses it. Drake pursues an appeal. That was the palatable rendition. It omitted the most consequential element, what Universal actually articulated when granted their opportunity. Now that their words exist in the public record, the strategic landscape has been permanently reconfigured. Universal did not simply mount a defense, they erected a mirror spanning the width of a skyline and compelled Drake to confront his reflection. And what that reflection exposed is an individual who assembled his empire wielding the identical arsenal he now desperately petitions the courts to outlaw. Proceed directly into the filing, because the terminology here inflicts more structural damage than any competitive record ever has. Universal states with unambiguous directness that Drake himself leveraged their infrastructure to target Kendrick in equally inflammatory rhetoric. The parent corporation surveyed the wreckage and pronounced both combatants deployed ordnance. You simply cannot process that his detonations landed closer to your foundation. And this declaration carries singular weight because Universal is not speculating. They possess the internal architecture, the promotional expenditure reports, the algorithmic placement strategies, the radio amplification data. Every dollar that traversed their system, Universal tracked with granular precision. When they assert Drake weaponized their apparatus offensively, they testify from inside the machinery, and that machinery just reversed against the operator who believed he controlled it. The filing references the district court's determination under established New York jurisprudence. The tribunal concluded that whether a statement communicates fact or opinion hinges on context, structure, tonal register, and circumstances. Not like us, released during a rhetoric-saturated lyrical conflict overflowing with amplification and personal attacks, would be interpreted by any rational consumer as commentary, not testimony. Commentary, that is the juridical bedrock Drake attempts to fracture. But appellate proceedings do not grant second opportunities. No supplementary evidence, no additional testimony. An appeal exclusively evaluates whether the original tribunal correctly applied existing doctrine. Unless Drake's attorneys demonstrate the judge fundamentally misinterpreted the statute, this terminates identically. Universal then delivers another surgically precise declaration. Drake endeavors to extract phrases from context and classify them as prosecutable character assassination if anyone anywhere might interpret them literally. They assert Drake seeks to isolate bars from a competitive exchange, remove them from their artistic environment, and exhibit them as sworn depositions. If that framework gained recognition, you would retroactively adjudicate the entire canon of hip-hop. Every Tupac declaration regarding Biggie, every Ice Cube composition targeting NWA, every exchange between Hav and Nas, all contain proclamations that stripped from context could be characterized as actionable destruction. Universal cautions this theory would catastrophically compromise a profoundly inventive art form built upon amplification, confrontation, and linguistic artistry. If Drake prevails, you extinguish competitive lyricism permanently. No corporation authorizes a confrontational record when the consequence is litigation every time sensibilities sustain injury. And here is what perpetually gets excluded from the conversation. Drake escalated personally first. He introduced Kendrick's domestic life, questioned paternity, targeted Kendrick's partner. The judge documented Drake was provoking reciprocation, and when Kendrick returned that intensity with compound interest, Drake demanded a penalty flag. You do not construct the bonfire, distribute excellent, and petition courts because your structure sustained thermal damage too. Expand your perspective, because an undeniable behavioral sequence exists. Rewind to Meek Mill. Back-to-back saturated every channel, terrestrial radio, sporting arenas, cable sports programming, synchronized and propelled by Universal's full operational capacity. Drake filed 0 grievances, not one legal action, not one statement protesting Universal weaponizing his output, because he was winning. When the machinery serves you, you celebrate it. Then examine Pusha T. Documented accounts circulated for years suggesting Drake or his operatives deployed institutional leverage to suppress a release. The identical individual now alleging Universal promoted a record against him allegedly harnessed that infrastructure to bury a record targeting him. That is offensive deployment of corporate machinery against a fellow artist, and it illuminates a behavioral pattern that demolishes his juridical foundation with the force of a controlled demolition. The precedent of selective outrage, embracing the system when it serves your interests and condemning it when it serves another, is not a legal argument. It is a confession of convenience. During the Kendrick confrontation, Drake distributes competitive records through social media. Universal, exercising contractual provisions Drake voluntarily endorsed when he signed and deposited those checks, reclaims and redistributes through sanctioned channels. That is the corporation executing its function, enforcing a contract. Yet Drake frames this as treachery, as though performing precisely what record companies exist to do constitutes betrayal.
The cognitive fracture here is staggering. And really, once you sit with that for a moment and genuinely process the absurdity of what is being argued, it becomes impossible to view this legal pursuit as anything other than a man who cannot reconcile the difference between the world owing him something and the world simply moving forward without waiting for his permission. Here is what truly propels this entire situation into orbit. Drake's commercial positioning has been shifting for years. He has not sustained chart supremacy beyond a single week since approximately 2018. His catalog remains colossal, metrics enormous by normal standards. Nobody argues irrelevance, but the gravitational cultural dominance, the sensation nothing moved without Drake at center, has been diminishing well before Kendrick entered any booth. Then, Not Like Us does not merely win, it reconstructs history. First competitive track to reach Billboard's summit, a composition designed to dismantle Drake became the most consumed product nationwide. That is not losing a lyrical exchange, that is losing cultural consensus in real time on the most consequential platform imaginable. When your adversary does not merely defeat you, but rewrites the entire scoreboard while doing it, the response defines you permanently. The world was watching what came next, and what came next was not music, it was paperwork. Rather than executing what Hove accomplished after Ether, retreating to the laboratory, manufacturing the blueprint, demonstrating supremacy through output, Drake mobilizes toward the courthouse, initiates proceedings, contests dismissals, maintains the laceration exposed for the entire world to examine. And here exists the paradox. Every time Drake submits a motion, Not Like Us experiences resurgence. Streaming metrics accelerate, charts ascend. He functionally markets the composition that dismantled him with every filing. A respected industry figure once communicated that Drake was a different entity without the institutional apparatus behind him. Every artist at the zenith requires infrastructure. Kendrick requires his, but Kendrick appears to comprehend the symbiotic arrangement. Drake demands every advantage the machinery provides while rejecting corresponding obligations. He demands placement, amplification, licensing, but exclusively when they serve him. The instant that machinery operates for another roster artist, suddenly it constitutes conspiracy. Universal is ensuring everyone sees the contradiction, and it reverberates at deafening volume. And this is where the entire foundation of Drake's argument collapses under its own gravitational inconsistency. You cannot simultaneously be the beneficiary and the victim of the same system. You cannot accept the throne when the machine places you upon it and then cry treason when it places someone else in your chair. That duality is not merely hypocritical, it is structurally incoherent. and Universal, with surgical calculation, has laid that incoherence bare for every observer to examine without obstruction. Behind the filings, real human beings exist whose lives were conscripted into a spectacle they never volunteered for. Drake introduced dimensions transcending competitive spirit by orders of magnitude. He targeted Kendrick's partner, interrogated biological parentage, positioned real people into crossfire bearing zero connection to artistry. When Kendrick reciprocated and amplified, Drake desired protection, but the individual who programmed the coordinates for excessively personal was Drake. He inputted the navigation. He accelerated to maximum velocity, then expressed astonishment at mutual wreckage. The references Kendrick incorporated did not crystallize from nothing. The documented incidents, the staged circumstances with a 17-year-old, the interactions with Millie Bobby Brown generating discomfort, first-hand Toronto testimonials, these were documented by publications with legal departments scrutinizing every assertion. Kendrick weaponized an existing narrative accumulating over a decade. That distinction carries enormous significance. The alleged reputational damage was not generated by a song, but by years of documented incidents about which the public crystallized opinions long before Kendrick activated a microphone. The asymmetric standard from Drake's supporters is breathtaking in its audacity. They insist on evidentiary rigor against Drake while treating his allegations as established certainties. Courtroom standards for one faction, unconditional credibility for the other. That is partisanship disguised as objectivity. The Breakfast Club dedicated substantial coverage to this dynamic. Charlemagne characterized Drake as the most prominent sore loser across entertainment entirely. Adherents dismiss it based on Charlemagne's orientations, but when a proclamation receives factual reinforcement through observable patterns, the lawsuits, appeals, coded references in every release, provocations at anyone acknowledging Kendrick won, the messenger becomes irrelevant. Behavior constitutes its own testimony, and the accumulated weight of it is overwhelming. And this is an element that genuinely demands absorption. When the collective weight of observable actions across multiple years, across multiple platforms, across multiple legal jurisdictions all point in a single directional conclusion, the individual data points cease to matter. The aggregate pattern becomes the argument itself. And the aggregate pattern here communicates one unmistakable message. This is an individual who has fundamentally refused to accept an outcome that the rest of the world processed, acknowledged, and moved beyond a long time ago. Universal's response carries destructive force precisely because it confronts hypocrisy without evasion. If Drake's theory succeeds, it dismantles hip-hop's creative bedrock. Wordplay survives, metaphors persist, but competitive lyricism as currently practiced, authentic rivalries, genuine confrontational records, real reciprocal warfare, terminates completely. No entity authorizes that content risking litigation. No executive sanctions promotion for a record becoming exhibit documentation next month. The suppressive consequences would be instantaneous and permanent. Consider for a moment the chilling arithmetic of that reality. Every aspiring artist who dreamed of creating the next legendary confrontational record would have to consult legal counsel before writing a single bar. Every producer who crafted a beat specifically designed to amplify competitive energy would have to question whether their instrumental was constructing a liability. The entire creative ecosystem that produced the most electrifying moments in hip-hop history would be retroactively criminalized by a legal precedent born from one man's inability to accept losing gracefully.
Can Drake substantiate quantifiable harm? He would need concrete, measurable degradation. How, when metrics declined before the confrontation commenced? How isolate one composition from a trajectory already in motion? Any counsel dismantles that in minutes. Drake asserted harm to his enterprise, identity, psychological equilibrium, and family security. Those deserve principled consideration abstractly. But when you escalated first, introduced families, publicly challenged reciprocation, judicial sympathy evaporates. The comparison that carries the most weight in this entire discourse is what separates architects from litigants. Hav absorbed defeat. Ether became a verb for annihilation. He did not litigate, did not file appeals, did not distribute provocations for years. He entered the laboratory, made the blueprint, constructed a billion-dollar empire, let the output communicate at volumes no courtroom approximates. Imagine Hav initiating defamation proceedings over Ether. The blueprint never materializes. The Black Album never exists. That energy channels into resentment. That is the trajectory Drake selected. Every quantum of creative energy, every legal dollar, every media cycle invested in institutional grievance. Meanwhile, Kendrick's GNX tour obliterated the highest-grossing rap tour benchmark. He has barely uttered a syllable since. The individual perpetuating this is Drake, and each instance propels audiences to not like us. Someone captured it perfectly. Pursuing litigation over a competitive composition is pitiable. Possessing a generational composition under active litigation is legendary. Drake transformed Not Like Us beyond a recording into a juridical reference point, cultural monument, permanent testament to his inability to metabolize defeat. That composition achieved immortality. Legal proceedings guaranteed permanence streaming metrics never could. Drake publicly advocated prohibiting rap lyrics as criminal evidence. The foundational argument was that lyrics constitute artistic expression, not literal claims. That is precisely Universal's argument. Not Like Us constitutes art, expression, commentary. Drake now occupies the opposite position, subjecting Kendrick's lyrics to the interpretive standard he declared should never apply to any artist. The hypocrisy registers at deafening frequency. And this is not a minor footnote. This is arguably the single most damaging contradiction in Drake's entire legal strategy, because it demonstrates with documented public evidence that he does not actually believe the principle he asks the court to enforce. He advocates not for artistic protection, but for selective immunity, shielding himself while demanding that identical vulnerability be applied to his opponent. Courts recognize that asymmetry. Judges see through it with clarity. If Drake's theory achieved acceptance, repercussions for hip-hop would be civilizational. Corporations embed provisions prohibiting lyrical disputes. Legal departments scrutinize every bar. Spontaneity and authenticity get excised by attorneys. The industry already operates with extraordinary risk aversion. Append defamation liability, and you never witness another Ether, Hit 'em Up, or No Vaseline. The tradition perishes. Universal comprehends this. Their motives are not exclusively altruistic. They profit from cultural detonations, but the practical consequence preserves something essential. Drake is not the inaugural figure sustaining public defeat. Athletes lose championships. Politicians lose elections. Character is measured by response architecture. Drake's response consists of litigation, appeals, coded provocations, and adamant refusal to advance. The restoration pathway has been perpetually visible. Hobbs' pathway. Enter the laboratory, manufactures something undeniable. Instead, Drake amplifies the reverberations, over 2 years and accumulating. As someone respecting his contributions, observing this generates discomfort. He possesses legitimate talent, a historic catalog, brilliance outliving us all. But currently, the only conversation is litigation, graceless defeat energy, and contradictory behavior. That is not Kendrick's construction. That is not Universal's engineering. Drake authors this chapter in the most unflattering medium available.
And the painful irony is that the same creative instinct that once made him special, that ability to command attention and dominate narrative, is now being deployed in service of his own diminishment. Every interview, every legal filing, every coded social media reference reinforces exactly the narrative he desperately wishes would disappear. He has become the primary architect of his own unfavorable portrayal, and every brick he adds makes it more permanent, more visible, and more impossible to demolish. Where does this lead? Drake's response carries an April 17th deadline. When it surfaces, every syllable receives examination, but the evidence suggests this appeal receives dismissal. Nothing fundamentally transformed. Arguments remain identical, facts unchanged. A competitive composition during a documented confrontation is not getting reclassified as character destruction because counsel reformulated the complaint.
Precedent is established, doctrine is clear, but Drake persists because the exercise no longer targets victory. It targets avoiding acknowledgement of defeat, constructing an internal narrative that the campaign continues, because conceding Kendrick outperformed him apparently represents worse than incinerating millions pursuing nothing. Each new filing reproduces the cycle mechanically. The digital landscape erupts. Not Like Us ascends. Kendrick's metrics accelerate. Memes proliferate. The narrative calcifies permanently. Zero surprise if within 48 hours, Not Like Us reoccupies Billboard's upper echelon. Drake files, the internet responds, Kendrick benefits. Endless recursion. It has become almost algorithmic in its predictability, a self-perpetuating engine of promotional energy that Drake himself fuels with every motion he authorizes. The genuine tragedy is achingly simple. If Drake would cease, disappear for 6 months, channel everything into a body of work that resonates, return with the intensity that established him as generational, the conversation transforms. The permanent mark cannot be removed, but it need not constitute the defining chapter unless he continues ensuring it remains the only discussion, which is precisely what he executes. The direct question, and genuine honesty is the expectation. Does this appeal possess legitimate probability of success? Against governing framework, established precedent, and documented facts, the answer is definitively negative. And will Drake ever cease? Will he examine accumulating invoices, public mortification, defeats stacking like masonry, and pronounce the cost exceeded? Or is this his identity now? Not the artist of Take Care, not the architect of Nothing Was the Same, not the individual who released If You Are Reading This and altered surprise releases permanently, but the individual investing years in judicial chambers attempting to litigate out of losing a lyrical exchange. Because currently that is the narrative, and every filing authors another chapter in the most self-destructive manuscript in hip-hop history. The digital conversation surrounding this situation has reached a pitch that honestly exists in a category entirely its own. Drake's supporters work tirelessly constructing alternative interpretive frameworks, and some make genuinely thoughtful observations. But the fundamental challenge they face is that the evidence does not cooperate with their preferred conclusion. You can reframe, recontextualize, and reinterpret, but the raw facts remain stubbornly resistant to rehabilitation. And when Universal itself, the entity with more internal knowledge of this situation than any external commentator could possibly possess, chooses to align against Drake's narrative, the interpretive exercise becomes exponentially more difficult for anyone attempting to defend his position. Share perspectives in the comments. If you maintain Drake possesses a legitimate pathway, articulate it. If withdrawal is the assessment, that carries equal value. This is without qualification the most captivating and consequential situation in documented hip-hop history, unfolding in real time. Activate notifications because every time documentation surfaces, comprehensive examination follows. The appreciation for everyone integrating this channel into daily routines is genuine and deeply felt. The community constructed here will never be taken for granted. To everyone maintaining support and demonstrating investment, it carries authentic significance. The next installment arrives soon. Remember, sometimes the most annihilating exposure originates not from adversaries, but from the very individuals who constructed your foundation. When documentation emerges from inside the institution, zero territory remains for concealment. Reality possesses undefeatable persistence. Stay safe out there, always.